Didn't press go live. Let's try again. Paul, we're back for a summer special. Welcome, champ. Has it sunk in yet? And how do you feel?
Yeah, well, it didn't sink in at the time because you and I were about 5 or 6 pints down at the time when the final results came in. But yeah, back down to earth now.
There's a question we could probably knock off 8 of the questions we've had straight away. Everyone wants to know: have you been paid yet by Sky?
Yeah, I got paid really quickly, and it wasn't. I'm not like friends of Sky or anything like that. And having spoke, a few people had DM'd me saying that they were due like managing the month money or whatever the winnings is. Is it £500 or is it a games console?
Yeah,
Something like that that they're due for May, and I think everything was paid out on the same day, which was kind of a couple of weeks after season end. So yeah, paid out. Everyone worked okay.
fantastic,
Don't
mate.
tell anyone my address.
To everyone. Many congratulations, Paul. Absolutely superb, and it's great to have so many people with us in the stream already. Seeing this, where are we? 28th of June. We're on odd time to do a stream, but Brownie SkyFF says, even all, great to have you both back. Congrats again, Paul, on winning Sky. Phil McMahon is in. Manchester, Windy. 1965. He managed to finish joint 10th. Absolutely superb. Very, very well played, Windy. Liam Dorian, former champion, former £50,000 winner in as well. FPL Sparta, Matt Woolley, Dan Perry, and Ammon Tatler. Great to have you all with us. Thank you so much for joining us. So what we thought we would do, I suppose, is just have a bit of a walk through your season, Paul. I suppose we've got your starting 11, and
Yeah.
maybe you can just kind of talk us through the high points and the low points and the key decisions and things and any learnings along the way. So that would be quite a cool thing to do in the summer. We've got a few questions as well. Obviously, the game hasn't launched yet. There's quite a lot of transfer activity going, so there's not really a lot of point potentially in talking too much about specific players yet for next season because who knows if Harry Kane is going to be, for example, and there's lots of unknowns, but we can certainly have a look forward. As well. What have you been up to, Paul, since the break? It's been about a month now, haven't it? Yeah, exactly a month since
Yeah.
the end of May.
I've not had much time off work, so I've been working quite a lot. I've been down in London a few times with work in that period of time. I was across in Norway for the Scotland victory, which
Wow.
is up like the game was dreadful for 85 minutes, but was one of the best experiences I've had as a Hibs fan, other than winning the Scottish Cup against Rangers. I think it's kind of the top three or top four moments in football, just the two goals in two
I can
minutes right at the
imagine.
very end in 32-degree heat on the kind of front row with the sun beaming down. It was pretty surreal, but that was a great trip. But other than that, yeah, busy. Like I felt a bit stressed towards the end of the season, as you can imagine. So
Absolutely.
just like I've been sleeping a little bit better this month. So yeah, catching up a bit of sleep, family time as well.
Good. And are you the legend of the office? Does everyone know in your work? Is it like, oh, there he is, there's the guy. See him over there. He just won Sky Fantasy. Or not?
A little bit, a little bit. I told you the story that I was in a meeting one day, and it was someone that I thought was more into rugby than football. I didn't realise that they were a football fan as well and played fantasy football. And asked him what podcast he listens to, and he said the Green Arrow, and I was like, "Oh, do you know Andrew Ferguson?" Then he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I listen to him in the car and the pod all the time." And I was like, "Oh, he's my mate."
Wicked. Thanks for that. Um,
Um, but yeah, so yeah, a few people know, and then yeah, word got out, particularly on the winnings more so than the accolade of winning it. Which
yeah.
and still, you and I had a chat about like on one of the pods before. For me, the accolade of being, I guess, the best at the game that I love, and that
Yeah.
I chose to do this podcast with you because I like talking about the game. That accolade means more to me than prize money ever did anyway.
I suppose to people who don't understand fantasy football, I think they look at it as like, like a form of betting almost, and they think, you've had a good bet in. It's not about the bet so much then, is it? It's about the it's about the winnings and stuff. But obviously both really, really nice. Good evening as well to Matthew Donald, Phil Speck, Dave Hannigan. Great to have you with us as well. Okay, let's have a quick look then, Paul. We've got your game week 1 team from last season up. Do you want to give us just a bit of commentary and a few highlights?
Yeah, so this season was different to the previous couple in that there was no overhaul after 4 weeks. So I'm setting up a team for the longer term rather than the short term fixtures. Albeit a couple of those picks in there were shorter term picks, particularly Romeo and Eric Dyer. I think I had to remind myself of how the individuals performed at the start of the season now. I think I had an average start. Liverpool didn't start particularly great, so Van Dijk and Alisson double up didn't perform particularly well. But Spurs did keep 2 clean sheets.
Dyer had a really good start in particular, didn't he?
In the first 4 games, and Dyer scored
in
one of the games. He didn't keep a clean sheet,
yeah.
So they done okay. I think the biggest win for me to begin with was starting with João Palhinha. So I had done a little bit of research. You and I, on and off air, always speak about having the best budget enabler in the team right at the very start. And I'd say at the very least, if you can't identify the best budget enabler, have the price point ready to move quickly in one move into that player, and then just hold them for the foreseeable. And having João Palhinha, who I think he's 20, when I looked at the stats pre-season for Sporting Lisbon, he had played 27 games previous season. He had averaged 3 tackles per game, and he'd got 3 goals. So 1 in 9, a goal in every 9 games for a defensive midfielder, pretty good return. And also that 3 tackle average showed that with a good win, they would have picked up consistent tackle bonus, and he was at the perfect price point, I think, to allow. I started with Salah, started with Kane. It really allowed to get Haaland in early as well, and have the most expensive defender in the game as well. So having that structure set up the way I did kind of worked really well for me at the start, even though the points weren't raining in. I don't think I had an amazing start. I think I had a middling, kind of somewhere between average and good. But for anyone that listens to this pod usually and knows my style, that suits me down to a T. Making sure that nobody around me can have high percentage hauls, and just setting up that structure for the long term and kind of retaining transfers to begin with. And
the 2 you didn't mention were probably really important as well. So Saliba was a bit of a risky pick. Arsenal thankfully played, I think, on the Friday night, didn't they, against Palace on the opening night. So we were a bit unsure on Saliba. But I think he was 7.4 million, I want to say. And as soon as we saw he was in, he was in. And what a signing he was to get in nice and early. And Brennan Johnson, he became a little bit of a laughing stock, but he actually did all right in patches, didn't he? I think he got a couple of goals, got a couple of shots bonus and things. So again, he kind of did a job, and that's really in the first opening weeks of the season, when there's no overhaul, especially, all you really want is your team set up in a reasonable position, right? No, you want everyone playing as long as Johnson's playing every week. All right, a few 2-pointers, then you get the odd 7-pointer or the odd 4-pointer for his price point. If it enables Kane and Salah, then move on to Haaland. You've got Cancelo and Van Dijk. That's all you want. So yeah, a pretty good start there, wasn't it? I think I held on to Dyer longer than you, because I think I had one of his goals. I think he scored twice, and I think
that's right.
I think I had the second goal, and I was get it up, yeah, sort of thing. But yeah, really good starting team then, Paul. What happened after that?
Yeah, so a few things for the season. So Palhinha, saying the structure to start with, there was an early Leicester requirement. They were playing Forest on Monday night. I know this is if Dan Cox is either in the chat or going to listen back to this. It's a painful one for him because he avoided it. But Maddison on a Monday night had the feeling that he was going to be the highest owned. A lot of Twitter chat, a lot of chat in the WhatsApp groups about bringing him in. So I did that on that ownership perspective, and he got a double. I think it was a 18-pointer, doubled up to 36 on the Monday night. So making that move. There's instances where I've made moves similar throughout the season and it's not paid off. probably Maddison the
Yeah.
second time round, and a few others as well. I'm quite happy to make those moves when I know that I'm getting the fixture gain every time that I'm doing it, and I'll hold the player for a little bit afterwards. So for all the good ones, there's a few that doesn't pay off as well, but those are moves that I'm always going to make, I think, to make sure that I'm just staying with the pack, and anything that doesn't come out the back of it. So that was a good move for me, and I guess the other one in the first half of the season was a semi-controversial one in that I had brought in Dean Henderson, I think, for a fixture gain at some point in time. Perhaps it was the Leicester game. I maybe made two moves at that point in time. I didn't keep a diary, but I then held. He went on a spree of conceding numerous games in a row and not picking up as much bonus. And it was a popular move to bring him in. A lot of people got massively frustrated with him and took him out. And then he went on a nice little run for me when I kept him in, where I got my first ever Sky not saving a penalty save bonus, and there was a clean sheet in there, or two as well. So I love it when you own a player that others don't want to own because they've been burnt by him before, and then it pays off because you just know that people won't go back there as well. So around about that time there was a complete kind of spread of goalkeepers. I know Kepa did well. I think you moved on to Kepa fairly, right? Yeah. Kepa did well in that spell as well, based on his price. Obviously Mendy was first choice at the start of the season, and those that brought in Kepa done well as well. And I had contemplated it on multiple occasions, but I think Henderson, I wouldn't necessarily say outscored him, but kept pace with Kepa over that time period, and then the saving of a transfer would have benefited me further on down the season as well.
In terms of obviously both of us at that point, I think we reasonably tracked quite similarly in terms of rank in the first third of the season. I think I was ahead of you for most of it, and everything seemed to be going really well for both of us. I remember I came up to yours. Was it November? I think November time, and we kind of had a look and a chat, didn't we? We were like, I think I was about 150th, and you were about 220th, and we hadn't used a lot of transfers, and we were like, flipping heck, things are looking pretty good, and
yep.
But I think looking back, it was we always talk about structure, don't we? How important structure is, and you said it last year, and I don't think I've done one move this year where I've made two transfers to make one transfer essentially by having to, and that I think was massive, and the price points, the same in Telegraph, right? But the price points, how important is it to get those price points in place?
Yeah, it's fundamental to the game in my eyes, and how to be successful. There's various occasions I had to get I tried to get Aguero, and this is when the final time I did it was when Man City were playing Burnley. It was at the Etihad, and I had coverage and defensive coverage. I could have captained Cancelo, or I could have captained maybe Stones or Diaz that I owned at the time. And I brought in Aguero, and I think he did score a penalty, but then got injured and then was out for a period of time afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I had taken out another player that I didn't want to take out to bring in a budget enabler to then go up to Aguero. And I said to myself, look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't get the best, like the most expensive player in, or if they're going to be the most captained, but make sure that that's part of the plan that you're devising when you're making moves in the lead up to that, and that you've got the ability to do it. I think Ian Parham says quite often that he likes to keep the budget aside, whether that's with players as placeholders or money in the bank, so that he can afford the most expensive player in every position. Yeah. Maybe not goalkeeper, because we've seen that the premium goalkeepers aren't necessarily the best in Sky, but particularly in defence, midfield and attack, being able to get those players in one move. But balance that with, I knew there was going to be a point in time where I want Salah, Haaland and Kane in my team, and I don't want to be using my transfers to rotate between the three of them as well. So that means leaning up with Saliba, with Palhinha, and perhaps even another budget enabler to allow us not to make multiple transfers on those premium heavy hitters.
And looking back, I think that was the move for me, which which made my season in terms of there was a decision point one there reasonably early. Well, I can't remember, maybe September, October, where Liverpool, Spurs, and City all had these run of fixtures, concurrent run of fixtures. You basically needed all three of them, which was incredibly difficult to do, or you had to use transfers to kind of rotate them in and out, right? Which obviously you get the benefit of multiple captaincies, but you are burning through transfers early, aren't you? And I made the decision, I think you did as well, to just get them in and just leave them. And like I say, it did help because obviously we'd identified Saliba, Palhinha, even Johnson. And this is where Brennan Johnson for me plays his role, right? It's not just about the points he brings for me; it's what he enables of the rest of the team. And
you held on to him quite a bit longer than I did as well.
Yeah, so it was just having the three in. Then it was never. I didn't want to burn through transfers early, and that kind of helped me massively. What was there anything else in the first half of the season, Paul, that you think really helped into, I don't know, a piece of luck or a specific like transfer you did or anything like that?
There was a Friday night, if you remember, where there was a couple of games on, and Fulham played at home to Nottingham Forest, and Forest were in the middle of this run where
I remember this game.
They were conceding a lot of goals, and because it was a Friday, it was the start of the game week, and I never liked taking out a player that's due to play to bring in a player. And I did think that Mitrovic was the best option, or had the highest ceiling, if you like, for that game. But because I didn't want to take out a player, and Palhinha had been serving me really well up until that point, so I just kept him. I think I would have had to have done two moves to get out two players that I didn't want long term, and it just didn't feel, the move just didn't feel right to me for my team at the time. And then Palhinha scored, and Mitrovic missed the penalty, I think. So a lot of people I saw had brought in Mitrovic, then captained, take the captaincy off a player that's done really well. And yeah, like,
I heard still now. We've all been there, right? And, but they're the luck, in your position. That's the, if you were looking at the goal scoring odds and look at all the odds for everything, then Mitrovic was probably the best pick. But you decided to, stick to your plan, suck it up a bit, and as it worked out really well. But you've seen it like now yourself, obviously, Paul, and obviously I remember from a couple of years ago just how much these small pieces of luck, they seem obscene luck, but you need luck to win this game, don't you? And that's an example of Palhinha scored maybe 5 or 6 goals all season, or I don't even know if that much either, but it just happened to be on that evening when Mitrovic missed a penalty on the captaincy.
Yeah, I said Mitrovic missed a penalty. That's not. I just had a look there just now. He didn't, but it was the fact that I think it was more the fact that people had brought Mitrovic in, took the captaincy off Palhinha, and then captained them for a 2-pointer when you're expecting kind of attacking returns in that fixture. They scored 3 goals as well, and Mitrovic didn't get any attacking returns. I think that was more what sticks. There was a Newcastle he missed the penalty against, wasn't it? It was a double hit. So
we've got a few more legends on this screen, and the main man in the middle is probably, I would personally say, the pick or the key decision over the period of the season that may have obviously not single-handed you on it, right, but put you in that incredible position to be able to play the game from the front, and that was picking Nick Pope over Ederson, because I went Ederson and you went Pope, and the points difference was staggering.
So for a long period of time, I chalked this down as luck, because for me it was very, very close, and I had the money to get Ederson, and I chose to go Pope. And the more I've thought about it now, and I think you've kind of influenced my decision, it's something that definitely there's a takeaway here from. I'm very much of the ilk. If I had picked Ederson, I wouldn't have went back to Pope, because Ederson played second every game to Pope in that run of 7, 8, 9 fixtures post World Cup. And I got quite a few DMs of people that had Ederson saying, would you move to Pope? Would you move to Pope? And I genuinely, if that had been my team, I wouldn't have moved, for the reason that you're getting a fixture gain every time by playing Ederson first, and it just so happened he was conceding 1 in every game on the run up to it. So if there's anything to take from here, it's when picking at this, like for me, when picking either at the start or at an overhaul, and I'm stuck on a 50-50 decision to pick the player that plays first most in the games afterwards, because if it had been the other way around and Ederson was playing first in all those fixtures and Alan Ederson, then I probably would have advised to move to Pope in. Had I been in that position, I would have done so myself. But because it was the opposite way around, I didn't need to do it. I didn't need to do anything.
No, it was excellent, excellent playmate. And I think I had a similar one in the first half of the season. I went with Kepa and Thiago Silva, which sounds madness, but I think they had like a 5-2 at that period, and in the first 4 games they were dreadful. And then in their 5th game, which was I think it was like a Thursday night or a Friday, it was a single game day. They were home to, I want to say Fulham maybe, but they kept a clean sheet, and I captained Silva. I think it was 0-0, and I captained Thiago Silva, and I had Kepa as well. I remember that bumped me right up, but it was just that extra. You said about that extra game or that extra one where there's an obvious potential hop on point after, and yeah, you're absolutely right, and it is incredible how it's that final game sometimes, which makes all the difference, and you basically get an extra game, which when you're making the transfer, it doesn't seem, it's like a 6 for 5 or a 5 for, it doesn't really matter. But when the game comes round, it's a 1 for 0, which is pretty big if your player keeps the clean sheet or gets the goal.
And gives you the
20 pointer.
And gives you the platform to jump off.
Exactly that.
If you need to reassess.
Yeah. Nick Pope, absolute legend for you, mate. Incredible. A couple of the ones we've got on. If we don't want to obviously kind of race ahead yet to the end. Actually, let's look at a couple of the trolls first. Edison is on there. We kind of mentioned him already.
Yeah, so people think, like, obviously picking Pope over Ederson. I eventually moved Pope onto Ederson for the extra fixtures that they had, and I think he kept 1 clean sheet in 5 games that I owned him.
And then didn't play.
And then didn't play at the end. Well, I brought him in at the end of the season, and then I brought him in again. That was twice. I owned him in 2 different spells.
Unbelievable.
So what he doesn't like, it's not tainted my opinion of him more as much as it's tainted those that owned him for that post World Cup run. So yeah, I think a couple of things. What you're going to find surprising is I managed to win the game, but there's a few events throughout the season that really, really hampered me. And when you see my final team as well, I think, like, for those that don't know what it looks like, there's a few surprises in there. It was like stuck together with Vortak at the end.
Clinging on by your fingernails, so to speak.
Yeah. So Ederson trolled me by owning him twice. Ollie Watkins is in both.
He is in both. I saw that.
And I think it's harsh to call him a troll. I brought him in for a captaincy at the start of the season. I gained the extra game day at the end of a game week where he did nothing. Then I captained him, he did nothing. And then I moved him on. But as I said, with that Maddison move, I'm happy to take those. I'm happy to play the volumes like that. But then I got him in very early on his run at the end of the season and captained him in the game. He was popular, but he wasn't the only captain on the game against Newcastle, where I think he scored 2 and got an assist or some permutation like that in the 3-0 victory. Whereas I know others had captained kind of like Trippier and other players in that run as well. So calling him a troll maybe is a bit harsh. And the other 3 on the screen are players that all hauled and were well owned, and I didn't own on game days. So in the 7-0 game, Liverpool against Man United, I brought in Rashford and captained Rashford. Same. And Salah wasn't massively owned at that point in time, but there was quite a few managers that got a really good jump by either holding on to him or bringing him in and captaining him on that game day.
How many points did he get? It was like 40-odd points, wasn't it?
Yeah, 40 points for 20 doubles, yeah. Which, considering Rashford missed that sitter in the first half, remember he kind of like passed it into Alisson's hands when he probably should have scored.
I remember at that point I was flying. I was up to like 15th, and I was really slowly, really flying and really solidifying my position in the top sort of 20. And I went from 15th to like 45th overnight, and then had to basically obviously start again then to try and climb. That was the. And if I remember as well, I'm not sure if it was the following week or the preceding. No, it can't have been the preceding week. The following week, I know we picked Salah as a captain on a Sunday afternoon when he was reasonably lowly owned, and he missed a penalty. He hit it wide. I can't. I can't
against Bournemouth.
I can't remember exactly, but he missed a penalty and he hit it wide, and I think we both captained him. And at that point, he was quite lowly owned.
Oh, he scored that game as
He did
well.
score that game, but he missed the penalty, and that was what a swing, incredible swing. And I remember him just as much for that game as I do for missing his points in the other game.
Yeah, in fact, I can't remember what game that was.
It just goes to
It was, it was against Arsenal. It was against Arsenal. They drew 2-2.
Yeah.
So he scored. He got shots tier 2, but he missed the penalty. You're right, and he was still lowly owned at that point, and that'd have been a nice haul. It was 21 points he got against Man United. That was 3 or 4 games before that.
And I remember at that point when he missed that penalty, you were about 30 points clear at that point. I'm sure you were right at the top. So that goal would have been it would have sent you 50 points clear. But
out of interest, that wasn't the team that ended up winning the game.
No, I know. We'll
that was the team that finished 10th in the end, which was quite nuts.
And just going back to the legends, just before we move on to the other two trolls, Ollie Watkins, you mentioned. I remember us having a chat on one of the pods, didn't we? About he just gets shot bonus every game. He was getting 4 shots every game. He's looked so dangerous. His ownership was climbing.
He was still real, well, at the time that brought him in, he was still really, really lowly owned.
Like 15 or 12%, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
But he was incredible for a few weeks, wasn't he?
It was that day where there was hardly any games on because of the FA Cup was on, so it was a Saturday, and he was a standout captain. I think it was against Bournemouth, and I brought him in that day because there was games on the Friday night as well. Yeah. I would have moved off a player that wasn't playing that weekend or played the Friday. There's somebody that I actually forgot to you pulled this slide together when I sent you some names last night, but there's a name that did incredibly well for me. And it's Martinelli. So I didn't own Martinelli all the way throughout the season up until kind of March. It was February, March time. And he had done well and his ownership was reasonably high earlier on the season. I think I brought in Saka because his ownership was higher or something like that at the time. And a lot of people were losing faith with him and selling him off. So he had went on a run of... I'll list this here. So from the 3rd of January, played Newcastle. He went on a run of 2 points, 1 point, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. Then he got 7 points against Villa where he'd been dropped and they'd just signed Trossard came in. So I can understand why a lot of people were selling him at the time. And I work in data, and I'm not ashamed to say that I don't use that many data tools when I'm picking my team at fantasy football, but I do selectively use it. And I was looking at the Hub's tools and unexpected goals. And I was really making a decision. On the Friday night, I opted not to go Ruben Neves. Remember, there was a 4-0 from Rashford, who had a bit of an injury. And then Wolves were playing Fulham. I had offloaded Palhinha 4 or 5 weeks prior to that, so I didn't have a captain for it. And I was considering moving Rashford, and I was trying to weigh up whether I thought the value of a transfer, should I move on to Ruben Neves? And I eventually opted against it, and it worked out well. I think Neves did really poorly after that, and that game finished 1-1. So there was no standout player that people were going to hurt me. And on the Saturday, I still had Rashford, and I think maybe a bit more news came out suggesting that he was going to be out for perhaps a little bit longer than what was first anticipated. And I had a look at options that I could afford from him. And I had a look at Arsenal's next 4 opponents based on using the Hub tools. And the 4 teams that Martinelli had to play next were the 4 with the highest expected goals conceded post-restart. And whilst he might not have been starting, he did well when he came on against Villa in the previous game. Even if he was to come on in those games, there's still a chance of picking up goals. So add luck to the element of a bit of stats. He then went on a run of 7 points, 16 points, 2, 10, 8, 7, 11, 5, 8. And that was after he had been sold in droves at that point in time as well. So, it's not, I guess, is it a traditional move that I would make based on it's not been an ownership point basis? Possibly not, but then looking at the stats and also considering that this was a peripheral player to the main crux of the team that I had, and who I was going to captain for the upcoming game weeks. I had all those players in place, so I had the luxury of picking a player that was going to complement what I had on the basis, and that worked. That move worked out really well.
Just while we're on transfers, I know we touched on it a little bit maybe in the last pod, but in terms of like the 50 transfers, what would be your personal preference, 40 or 50, if they were to stick with one overhaul?
It's difficult saying that I've just won the game with 50, the first season to run 50, but I'd probably opt for 40.
Okay.
So,
but that Martinelli pick, just for example, seems a very un-40 like pick, doesn't it? It seems to be a bit of a punt, I suppose, a very un-Paul like move. But
yeah, but then if Rashford was injured, I was going to have to move him on to Sunday at that point in time, I guess. You're right, though. Would I have made the move? It's all relative. I don't know how much transfers are used at that point as well, so it's pretty hard to say either way. But no, it was one of. I do use the hub tools from time to time, and it was one of two times I used it throughout the season, and I'll go on to tell you about the second time just now. Both times it massively paid off for me.
Superb. Just before we look at the last three players, one legend and two trolls. Question just about your two teams. So, like when we were first, second, and third, I think your first team was, I don't know, like 20 odd points clear of the second team.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that team was about 10 or 20 clear of mine. But you made this is the benefit of having two teams. So I made the decision at the start of the season that I wanted to try two completely different strategies. I went a big at the back, which obviously flopped massively because there were no clean sheets, right? So I ditched that one after about a month. Whereas you kept the two, and I think you went for Isaac in your A team, I believe.
Yep.
Which then allowed you in your B team to go for Callum Wilson. And again, would you say that bringing in Wilson, you would have done that if you only had one team up there, or?
No, I would have done it. I would have done Isaac. I think I'm an ownership type player, and I'd always pick that. I had said, if you remember one of the pods, I had said, look, I'm going to continue, and I think I said it on the Planet on James' Planet FPL pod when Suj was on holiday and I was a guest on there, is that this is the way that I'm going to play the game. Pick the players that got the highest ownership, look at some stats based or gut feel on the players around that, and keep within the structure. That's the way that I play the game. I've played it every season like that, and I've got consistent high finishes, albeit not top. Fourth in my first season, but since then I've not had a top finish. And you're right, but I said in the running, look, if I have to take a gamble at some point in time, I might do it. I just didn't see it as the team in second that I was doing it in. And I brought Wilson in on the Sunday, and I remember messaging you afterwards, like, what have I done? Like, I don't believe I've done this. Why would I do that? That was crazy. He was like odds on to score against Arsenal, and it was like I always look at the bookies odds if I'm in a dilemma about who to pick for captaincy or transfers to make as well. And and I just immediately regretted it. I regretted it 5 minutes into the game. Like, I was like, why did I do that? But then with the thought, well, it's only my second team. Although I had entered more cash, I didn't enter too many cash leagues, but I had entered more cash leagues with that team as well. So it was a weird spin. And I was like, and I messaged you saying, I don't know why I've done that. It's crazy. Well, we know what happens next. We know what happens next. Don't we?
Do. It's funny because on all these points you mentioned, it's funny because I know where I was when these things happened. Do you remember that? I can't remember who Newcastle played against when Wilson got the goal and assist in like the 87th and 91st minute. But I was walking around Cardiff Bay with fish and chips. And I remember looking at my phone with like 10 minutes left and thinking, never mind, gutted for Paul. And then I finished my walk, got back to the car, and I turned the radio on, and it was, I showed the result, and I was like, and I had a quick look, and I was like, Talk about saved by the bell. It was Brighton. That's right. Yeah, incredible, wasn't it?
It was a very very strange run-in for me because I hadn't thought that I genuinely didn't believe that I would win it, and then after that game I did, but then the events of what happened in the next week, I was like, that was when I, not because I was so close to the finish line, like in terms of proximity of dates to the last day of the season, but it was more when that Wilson goal happened, I was like, this is one of those things that happens, and you know that like your focus is going to win it, and I was like, I am like now at this point in time I'm favourite, and then events happened over that next week, and I was like, I can't believe this is unwinding so badly.
Yeah, there's a couple of players when Brighton played Arsenal. I think it was at Arsenal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3-0.
3-0 and Estupin.
Estupin scores in the last minute.
Goal assist and a fucking cliche.
Yeah, a goal and assist. Like, and I'm sitting the whole game counting these passes and tackles.
That's right. And he wasn't going to. I think I even you messaged me saying he's not going to make passes. Thank God for that. And as you said that, he bangs in the top corner. It's like, jeez. Yeah. And then I think it was the same week. I think it might have even been the same weekend.
Yeah, you messaged like you. I'm not.
Oh, it was. It was.
You and I play poker. You and I play poker, right? And a thing that annoys people when you're playing poker is that if someone says, "Oh, 6 isn't going to come here," and like if someone's got an out, it's the 6 or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that because it wouldn't have happened." I don't believe in any crap like that. But you messaged me saying, "Well, at least Trent's done nothing," and he scores a free kick like within 30 seconds of you sending the message. But yeah, it was same weekend, or at least I think it was the same weekend. And his ownership of both players was quite high around me as well.
I just have a look just to see if I can find that Trent thing, because it was I think I messaged him like, oh, at least Trent's not getting passing, and then 30 seconds later, Trent goal, lol. Fuck's hell of a free kick, but it's one of those when you don't own them, they just sting 10 times as hard, don't they? But yeah, again, just harking back to that Wilson thing again, how close it was for you not even being in with a sniff at the end. It's crazy.
Do you know another funny, like, we've talked before, like it's almost like a kind of parody that we talk about when you did the Wilson move that time, and when I drunkenly made the comment about you not understanding the concept of multiple fantasy football games, it all stemmed because I had that Wilson move in my head. So it just makes it all the more funny that I guess that it's him that's ended up winning me the game in the end.
Absolutely insane. And let's look at your finishing team. Do you want to run through it?
Like, if there's any inspiration for anybody at any point in time on how you can win a game when things, I wouldn't say things don't go for you, like you could argue whether there's an element of unluckiness or just bad play towards the end combination. I don't know how much bad play I would put it down to necessarily, but if you have a look at that, that's not great, is it? Like Ederson, Dunk, who didn't play the last few games, Trippier. He did okay, and then obviously scored the own goal in the last game week. Konate, dreadful. Salah, Rashford, McAllister, Mahrez. I picked up Mahrez was my last transfer. I moved Solly March to Mahrez on the Sunday, and so Wilson was my second last transfer, and then Mahrez was my last transfer. If you'd known that he would have played he started the last 4 games. Yeah. And picked up 1 assist, and that was it in terms of overall output. 11 points from 4 games. Yeah, dreadful. Kane, Haaland, and Wilson. Even Haaland didn't he obviously didn't play kind of 2 of the last 3 games as well. That when you look at it, it looks dreadful, right? Like if you look at the games that are running in there.
And we were in the pub, right? So we were in the pub with Dan Cox, Ian Parry, Ollie Paul, and a few other guys. And obviously we knew Haaland wasn't starting, and it came down to you were a bit stuck between do you captain Kane or Salah, and I think it might have been Dan, wasn't it, who I know you're on Kane. I think you were on Kane regardless, but I think Dan clinched it for you maybe.
Yeah, well, I looked at if in doubt, I went and looked at the odds, and they were both exactly the same price to score, which didn't help matters much either. I'm not like I've read like a few books, Data Revolution, and a few others as well, like with regards to stats in football. And whilst there's a belief by punters, if you like, that there's patterns and this player scored against certain teams and stuff like that. It was the guy that owns Brentford, used to run a big syndicate, used to own a big syndicate company. So it was like a bookies, but large syndicate bets from the Far East, like Singapore and such like. And there was a chapter on it about betting patterns, and there's not really a suggestion that, other than coincidence, or yeah, you can look at weaknesses in certain teams, and if they persist with the same players and the same weakness, then of course players can take advantage of that. I think like Kane's got this amazing scoring record against Leicester, and he's got this amazing scoring record in the last day of the season. But I didn't want to look too much into that. And it was one of those, you know, when you flip a coin, like when you're like, right, whatever, I'm 50-50, I'm going to flip a coin, and if it lands on heads, then I'm going to go with decision A, and if it lands on tails, I'm going to go decision B. It felt like one of those moments that when I asked Dan the question, I already deep down wanted to pick Kane anyway. And when he said Kane, it like brought out, all right, that's what I was going to say anyway. And if he had said Salah, I think I would have been like, oh, well, actually, what Captain Kane, in that type scenario. So, yeah, I ended up going for him. I mentioned on Planet FPL's pod, and I've also been on, someone pointed me to the FISO chats where the guys that finished second and third are members, and had been chatting about the running. That I do. If there's, I'm not one for regrets or anything like that. I don't know if I overthought how to open up my team after the start of the game day, but if there was anything I wish I'd done, it was kind of for etiquette would be to have opened up the team. And it wasn't that was hide. Well, my team looked atrocious.
Yeah, but let's be honest, right? We're all in the pub. You're absolutely buzzing. It's the last thing on your mind, right? It was just, we were just so excited.
They changed the way to do it for like, was it last season or the season before? It was like it used to have the slider from private to public, and now I think you need to click on it. But yeah, Captain Kane, he scored after 2 minutes. Dan had said, "Oh, the teams in third and fourth, second and third had opened up their teams, and they both had Salah captain. So thankfully, in the last day of the season, it wasn't too sweaty. Albeit you had pointed out a scenario that I hadn't even thought about in game, which was if Trent had set up Salah for a goal, then I would have lost. Which was
it was actually I was sat next to Holly Shand, and it was actually because I was explaining it all to her, and she said, "Oh, so you don't want Trent to assist Salah?" And I was like, "Paul, we don't want Trent to assist Salah." So I can credit Holly with that.
I was on the basis that any single event that had happened, I couldn't lose the game at that point, but obviously could have. Yeah. So
if Salah hit the post, I think, didn't he, with like 20 minutes left or something, and again it just shows the margins absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, and if you'd have captained Salah, there would have been a 3-way tie at the top as well.
Well, I thought that was true, but then Colwell got backdated passing bonus, so one of the teams was only finished 8 points behind me rather than 10, so I would have lost. And I think it goes on goals scored over the course of the season, of which I would have also lost anyway on a tiebreaker. So
wow.
But I don't look at that move in isolation. One other thing that we hadn't mentioned was on the Thursday night. So last game of the season was on the Sunday, and on the Thursday night, I think the guy in second, who maybe ended up finishing third, had 2 transfers left, and brought in De Gea,
United Chelsea,
one of the transfers. And in the last 10 minutes, I didn't have a captain, so I captained Rashford, and Rashford played the 1-2 with Kepa to score, got the additional point for the shots bonus, so obviously got all of that doubled up, and then Man United conceded.
Joe Felix scored at the death, a complete non-goal, wasn't it? As in, like, it didn't matter. And again, I remember where I was. So I was in the pub, and I was chatting to my friend. There was a load of football boys over down the corner, and when Rashford scored, I obviously gave a massive, a big thank goodness for that. And then you messaged say, "Oh, he gets shot bonus as well, ha ha ha." And then kind of word got around the pub a little bit, because I was just very excited. I was on the ceiling really. I was a bit like, oh my goodness. And then we just need Chelsea to score. And when Chelsea scored, bear in mind it's the most nondescript, innocuous goal of all time. I was jumping around like an absolute madman, and everyone was looking around saying, what is going on here?" It's like, "You don't understand. It's just my mate, he's top," and it was absolutely incredible. But again, just another example of where completely an innocuous goal like that. Amazing stuff.
So I guess some of my takeaways for people listening as well. Like, you can have events throughout the season that don't go your way at all.
Salah 7-0.
Yeah, and look at the state of that finishing team. That is not good. And there's, I think when Liam Dorian was on, he described something that happened. Was it Aubameyang got a hat trick or something like that? I can't remember.
Against Norwich, 2 goals and an assist or something like that. It was, yeah.
Yeah, and he was really, really well owned at the time, and Liam didn't own him the season that he won. So even if you have a bad start or something happens throughout the season, stick with it. There's definitely margins to be made up elsewhere. My preference, and it'll always be the case, I'll be sticking to players when I'm planning. I'll be sticking to the players that are highly owned to be captains. And just try and look for an edge on the outside. A lot of these won't come off because they're not the obvious move, and that's why they're not highly owned at that point in time. But the secret to this game, I think, is do that, but get onto the bandwagons earlier, which is very easier said than done. But that's when you get a player in early at a low ownership, and other people swarm and get them afterwards after they picked up some decent points, because that's what picked up the momentum. It's like one of the best feelings in fantasy football, I think.
Completely agree. Just for completeness, I finished 43rd, which I would have snapped your hand off at the start of the season, but obviously, considering I was third with about 4 weeks to play, it was incredibly disappointing. I took a few gambles. I tried to catch you, Paul. I tried a few different things. I did hold back one transfer as well for ages, and I could have brought in Luke Shaw. I kept missing his holes. I could have brought in another player, so I was just holding, and then I brought in Callum Wilson on the final Monday night just to try and have one last smack at it, and obviously against Leicester, and Wilson blanked, but I also took him out for Harry Kane, who I didn't think I would need as captain on the final day because I assumed Haaland would play, so that was obviously a double whammy. So I think I dropped from like 15th to 20th to I finished 43rd, which was incredibly disappointing, but I went for it. I tried to catch you and tried to jump up the leaderboard, but it didn't work out. But overall, I think I think we had quite similar seasons. I was never too far away from you. You seemed to just creep ahead of me after the overhaul. I think the Pope over Edison was pretty significant in that, because I went Edison, you went Pope, and you kept grinding away these kind of 9-pointers, 11-pointers, whereas I was stuck on 1 or 2, and we were reasonably close. But the proof's in the pudding. You played it far better. You also picked McAllister up at a time when I think he got 2 goals, didn't he, or something like that. You got on McAllister ridiculously early.
Well, that was twice. Yeah. So early on in the season, you're right, against Leicester.
That was it.
Remember we missed. They had the goal ruled out, and then went on to get the double. I didn't captain him that game. I think
Niall didn't he?
Niall Murphy brought him in, and he captained him that game as well. I forgot about that until just now. As I say, I don't write a diary, so I was trying to remember events over the season, and then I got him in at an opportune time later on. I think it was a much more popular move at that time. It was on a Sunday, and brought him in, and he scored as well.
Good stuff. We've had some questions. Let's see if we can answer some of them. Colin Johnston, early thoughts for starting assets with good fixtures? I've got to be honest, I haven't looked yet, to be honest. Have you had any early thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, well, very, like, the way that the fixtures came out was very interesting, because I genuinely had written down a question that if Man City play in the first game and get to see their lineup, how many? I was going to ask you, how many players do you think that you would start from from their side. So I think it's going to be a popular question. It's going to be run in the pods, but it'll be interesting if they've not got a settled backline at that point. What people do. That's some, like, Man City defence is something that didn't burn me last season particularly, but I know people had bad experiences with Ake, Akanji, and others as well.
Simon Bulldog asks, what strategies or tactics we'll both be looking to carry over from this season and next? I think you defined it quite nicely towards the end there in your summary, Paul, about, you know, just getting the rock solid players, price points absolutely massive, get the right formation, highly owned captaincies, and I think for me as well, obviously these last 3 seasons have been quite funky in terms of COVID and then the World Cup. So we haven't had a normal season since like 2019. I don't think. So if we do have a normal season this season with 2 overhauls and a pretty normal season, I think the strategies can vary. But for me, it's still just holding transfers back. Just get a rock solid team for the first half of the season. Just, you know, maneuver it around. Make small gains where you can, but make your edge being discipline is the edge I find in Sky is the ability to not try and go for those 2-for-1s or 3-for-1s when towards the end of the season, like Estupiñán and Trent and all these players who were so important to, you know, Trent was so frightening not to own towards the end, and you just think of all the ones we used early on I would have loved to have Trent at the end.
So yeah, well, and for the start of next season, if we're looking at a player that I don't traditionally think is a great Sky asset, I think Trent now in that new role is
unbelievable,
and he'll be somebody that I'll be certainly looking to have from the off next season.
You got to fancy Declan Rice as well, I suppose, from like passing and tackling potentially. Wherever he ends up, Arsenal or Man City, he's not going to be on the bench, is he?
Yeah, Rice will be interesting in terms of price point, I think. He's like a player that's not traditionally thought of as a fantasy asset, but because his name's going to be in the papers quite a lot, does that mean he's going to?
I can't see him being like anything like Rodri's price. I can imagine coming in at like maybe 8.4, 8.5. I don't know. I can't see him being more than 9. Don't know.
So definitely someone to keep an eye. Definitely a player to keep an eye on.
On the day after the final day of the season, Paul and I visited Planet FPL up in Barnet. We had a fantastic time in a Stu recorded pod. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go on to Planet FPL, where Paul runs through it all. We're both incredibly hungover. Paul more than me, to be fair, but we had really good fun with them, and they bought us lunch in this incredible restaurant as well. So thank you so much, guys. James asks the question, has Paul been paid yet? Which you know it has. Any players from the promoted clubs are you most intrigued to see prices for? Again, I've been having the summer off, so I haven't really looked into anything yet. Anything from you yet, Paul? Or?
Yeah, perhaps the Luton goalkeeper. Like, Luton's got a nice early run of fixtures, and I can't see myself spending money on a premium goalkeeper. Also, with Luton's good fixtures, depending on the price of Calvin Morris up front, he looks like there's always one promoted striker that I always think like gets kind of 12, 15 goals a season. With Luton's start, it could be him. From the games I watched in the Championship last season, I like Anel Ahmedhodzic, who plays the right centre back for Sheffield United. Really good goal threat. I think he scored 6 goals last season, and they've got that random formation where their 2 centre halves go bombing on, right? And I think Heckingbottom, who used to be the Hibs manager, I think he's continued on that same discipline from Chris Wilder as well. I had a look at all the defensive midfielders on the train home today to have a look at their stats on who scored in terms of average tackles. See if I find kind of someone like Polina, but nobody really
stands up
to me. So I don't think I'll be looking at any players outside of that. Sheffield United does have good fixtures, so as I say, if Anel Ahmedhodzic starts the season and he's at the right price point, depends the pricing on other players, of course. Do I really want to be starting with a Sheffield United defender when they won't pick up passing? possibly not. But there's a few players that I've looked at.
But we'll definitely do some analysis in pre-season for everyone, so don't worry about that. Auto Reclose, what percent of the winnings is Paul's partner allowing him to spend on himself? Have you bought anything luxurious, Paul, for yourself, or is it? What's your a bit of a personal question, I know, but
I'm a bit of a fritterer anyway. Like I am modestly good with money, I think. I used to gamble a lot when I was younger, and I learned a lot of lessons there. Never more than what I could afford, but certainly over time I've got much better with money. I'd mentioned, I think on the pod before, that I turn 40 next year, around about the time that the Euro Championships is on. So a couple of my oldest friends and I are going to go across to Germany, whether Scotland qualify or not. And I said I'd pay for the trip. And nice. Actually looking at a camper van.
Amazing!
As an investment. So a lot of places in Scotland that I've never been to. I'd love to go up to the Outer Hebrides, and appreciate I can't drive over water, so there'll have to be some means of ferries and stuff like that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of places in the UK mainland that I've not visited as well, and I'd love to do that in kind of camper van. So if I was to spend a bit of money on investment with the winnings, then that'd be something I'm considering.
Superb. Bob Jacks 71, a strategy for getting a good start. I saw so many good players in the top 100 so early in the season. I was still in the thousands. I always seem to be playing catch up.
I don't think that I had that. Like, don't know if you're speaking to the right person, because I don't.
Well, I remember saying to you, you were 20,000th after a couple of weeks, and you were pretty down. And I was like, Paul, your team's fine. You're going fine. What's your beef? And yeah, it doesn't matter early doors, does it? As long as your team is set up right.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not using too many transfers to reconfigure it. So important, have the main structure. Don't fall behind by, like, if a 15% captain hits a hat trick and you don't own him, that's okay. If at the start of the season, if a 60% owned player hits a hat trick and you don't own him, that's not okay. So make sure you're covering scenarios like that, in my opinion. So you give yourself a base, and then stats work better when you've got history of stats to work off. So when you're sitting 7 or 8 game weeks in, you can understand expected goals conceded, expected goals for players that are getting the right positions, players that are picking up passing bonus, players that are picking up tackle bonus. You've got some data to work from at that point in time. So I'd say for the first kind of 5-6 weeks, provided there's no kind of random overhaul or anything like early doors, is to keep pace with minimum transfers in terms of highly owned players, and then use some of the tools or some content or your own analysis to make your own gains at that point.
I don't think a good start is imperative at all. It's good not to get a bad start. Don't get me wrong, as you just mentioned, but you look at the leaderboard and how much it changed in the final week. I found it astounding, because I looked at the leaderboards when we were kind of 1, 2, or 3 and the names were there, and for some reason, you think they're the ones now. They're the ones we got to beat. And the top 10 turned on its head so many times, and players came from nowhere to fly up. I flew down, others flew down, others flew up. It just changed so quickly, and like the time to win and lose the game is not at the start, is it? And I think that's what I mean by about getting the structure right and holding back transfers. Is okay, don't have a bad start. Don't go against Haaland 90% captain in game week 1. But then on the same note, it doesn't matter if you miss a few bits and pieces. Just keep your team rock solid, and that's the discipline. And then you strike at the right time, not feeling forced to strike all the time. It doesn't really matter where you are. We say it's, I think we spoke, didn't we? Saying like October, November, and we were in the top couple of 100. And I think at that point we knew from history that both of us were very likely to have pretty good seasons because of where we were at that point in time. And but we weren't in the top 100. We weren't, but we just we kind of knew that the top 100 will fall away, and then the better players all around us, and they did. If you look at that lead or that top 100 at the end of the season, it's just littered with names, right?
Yeah.
Couple more questions before we go. FPL Sparta asks, what's your aspirations for next season? Paul, do you think you can win it again next season?
I never go into the season thinking I could win it, but Mark was that. So if I've got a bar that's been set, is that Mark won it last year and then finished 14th this season? That's incredible. Impressive.
Incredible.
So what's my target? My target, if I can reach top 10, my target's always top 100. I think like top 100's getting harder to achieve. But I'd mentioned this on the Planet FPL pod that you and I were on the day after the end of the season, and I think there was a question came in about. Sorry, I'm stealing questions from other people's pods now. But a question came in was is based on the volume of good FPL players coming across and transitioning into Sky and making it harder to finish top 100 as the top 250, the new top 100. And I know that's FPL mentality, and that top 10k was the elite, and now because of the volume of players there, that perhaps top 50k is the new elite. But for me, Sky, because they show the top 100 in the leaderboard, that's tangible. That's what you can see. That's the name and lights situation. Ultimately, you can't prove anyone doesn't finish out where people finish if they don't finish in the top 100 as well, right? So yeah, top 100's my aspiration for next season again.
Well, top 100 is a bloody good finish in it. I think the thing in Sky, which is so intriguing and so compelling above probably all the other games, is that there's a lot of cash that can be won in the public leagues, in the Sky-owned public leagues, in mini leagues you're in, and obviously the whole game as well. It's really there for you. I think we spoke at the start of the season that that the part of the reason I enjoy playing Dream Team, Telegraph, and Sky more than FPL in a with a certain lens is because there's a very realistic chance of winning the whole game. As we've both kind of tasted now, it is there. So it's a realistic thing, and those who haven't won it yet, who have 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 points behind, which is not a lot of points. It's there for everyone, which is what makes it so exciting and so enticing. Again, it's not just the money either, is it? Don't get me wrong, absolutely superb, but the kind of thrill when fantasy football is your passion, is your thing. There's I'm trying to think of an equivalent, in another sort of passion thing.
It's our hobby. It's our hobby, right? And we spend a lot of time thinking about it. Exactly. We spend a lot of time talking about it. And if we played football, like played at the weekends, if you won the league, that's the indication that you're the best team in the league, right? And the aspiration is surely to be the best at your hobby, to enjoy doing it, which I've always done. Yeah. But if you're aspiring to anything in terms of progressive, or what's the aspiration, it would always be to be the best at the game as well. So that does, we say, outweigh the prize benefit from that perspective. I played other games and little to no money involved in a lot of those as well. Actually, if I'm setting myself something next year, it's to have a better Telegraph season, because I love Telegraph, and last season I felt I played the game dreadfully. So if there's something I'm going to learn next season, it's that. But that's for a different pod.
Good stuff. So that is it from us for this summer, and this is the final pod of the 2022-23 season. Thank you so much, Champ. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty, MCANULTY.
And my handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergie. Make sure you drop us both a follow. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions and leave some comments. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Just a quick hello to a few I missed out earlier on. Joseph Robertson, Manchester was in as well. Billy Brooks, Phil Speck, Golden Goal Fantasy Football, Andy Barnett was in as well. Owen Jones. Thank you so much for joining us on this end of June podcast. We'll be back in a few weeks. Expect the Sky game will probably launch in the next 3 weeks, I would guess. Expect FPL to launch potentially next week or the week after as well. It's going to be pretty pedal to the metal, I think, for the next 5. The season starts in 6 weeks, I want to say. Not long now, which means we'll probably be podding in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I would guess. So when it launches, we're not going to be in a massive, rush to pod immediately before, because there's still so much to sort out in terms of transfers and analysis and things. But I think last season we might have done 2, maybe 3 preseason pods, so we'll look to do the same sort of thing, hopefully for this season. But yeah, until then, everyone, enjoy your summers, enjoy what's left of it, enjoy the break before the madness starts ahead of the 23-24 season. See you soon all, and goodbye for now.